Hello, everyone. Welcome to the 21 Hats podcast. I'm your host, Lauren Feldman. This week, we introduce a new regular on the 21 Hats podcast team. Her name is Diana Lee, and she's the founder of a digital marketing agency. In a conversation with Jay Goltz and Stephanie Stuckey, Diana explains how she got her business off the ground by helping car dealers target diverse communities within their markets, how she bootstrapped her business by convincing those car dealers to prepay 50% upfront, and how her first attempt at building a software platform ended with her spending $1 million on a platform that no one wanted to use. Even in good times, owning and running a business can be a lonely pursuit. Our hope is that these weekly conversations will let owners know they are not alone in facing challenges. Same thing with our daily newsletter, the 21 Hats Morning Report, which highlights the most important news of the day for business owners, and which you can subscribe to at 21hats.com, where you can also find transcripts of our podcast episodes and lots of other articles and interviews. Joining me this week on the podcast are regulars Jay Goltz, whose companies in Chicago include a picture frame business, Artist Frame Service, and a home furnishing store, Jason Home. Stephanie Stuckey, who is CEO of Stuckey's, the snack and road stop business best known for its pecan log rolls. And our newest regular, Diana Lee, who is founder of Constellation Agency, a New York-based digital marketing firm. The episode is titled, I Didn't Look Like Them, But I Could Act Like Them. Welcome, Jay, Stephanie, and especially our newest 21 Hats podcast regular, Diana Lee. Thanks for joining us, Diana.
Thank you so much for having me.
Some of our loyal listeners will remember that you were actually a guest on a very early episode of this podcast when Karen and I interviewed you at EY Strategic Growth Forum. That was back in November of 2019. Lots happened since then. Remind us, Diana, tell us what Constellation Agency does.
Sure. We are a SaaS ad tech platform, and we also have what's called software-enabled services.
Wait, you're going to have to translate that for Jay. What's a SaaS ad tech platform?
How insulting and true.
It's a platform that has lots of sassy attitude, right?
Yeah,
Yes,
I like
yes.
it.
Well, you know, how Constellation was actually born is we were actually a digital marketing agency when we first started, but we just did not have the capabilities to scale. So we built a SaaS technology, which is software as a service technology that allows us to run marketing right from our platform and allows us to scale. So we do search, social, display advertising, connected TV, digital advertising as software enabled, where it means that we are running the media, or we also license the technologies to holding companies and to other brands that have infrastructure of a marketing team in-house.
You got this business off the ground, as you told us in our first conversation, by going after car dealers. Why car dealers, and how did you get your start?
I started back in 1989, so I'm 52 years old, but I started when I was 18, and I was going to college at the time, and I needed a summer job. So I went to a local car dealership to start, and I ended up staying in retail for 15 years and then did automotive consulting for another 15 years before I launched Constellation Agency. So at the age of 47, I launched Constellation Agency. And by then I had over 30 years of automotive experience. So I went to car dealerships in order to start because obviously I could speak the language. I didn't look like them, but I could act like them. And I knew that if I could pitch them, I could also sell them. And so when Constellation was first born, in order to scale the business right away, I would drive 9 to 15 hours a day in my car, going from dealership to dealership to pitch the idea of digital marketing and then try to get customers that way. So that was the birth of Constellation, which was 5 years ago. And it really did scale.
You've told me that car dealers represent about 70% of your business, but you do other businesses as well. Could you kind of walk us through, suppose Jay or Stephanie came to you and wanted your services, how would that conversation go and what could you do for them?
Yeah. So, Lauren, usually I ask the customer in terms of, do you have an infrastructure where you have marketers in-house launching the advertising? And so that would be one of the questions, because I'm never looking to actually fire anybody or get rid of actually teams of people. So I ask that question because if they do, then I'm going to quickly say, here's the technology that your team can use in order to scale creative and launch hundreds of ad units to Alexia. I would also ask Jay and Stephanie if they use a digital marketing company already, and do they like that company? So again, if their answer is yes, I'm very happy with that company, then all I'm going to do is try to license them the technology for their teams to be able to scale what they're currently doing now. And by doing that, it drives the efficiencies higher and the costs lower. So what I mean by this is, typically, all of these brands are looking to a creative department to make every single ad. And by all of these teams working on the advertising of doing it by hand, it takes too long. That's one issue. The second issue is it costs too much. What Alexia does is it's an automation of creative that's dynamically generated in real time without ever going to a creative department. So it allows you to scale the marketing on the creative side through automation and a feeding system that automatically makes creative in real time. So if they didn't have an agency of record or an in-house marketing team, or it was very small, I would ask Stephanie and Jay, let me show you what Alexia can do and how it would work for social, search, display, connected TV advertising, which is the same thing, which is it's software enabled where we could make hundreds of assets within seconds time to do what's called hyper localization.
What's an asset?
Oh, assets are creative assets. So they're ads that you would make creatively. So they're banners, they're displays. So they're actually just creative. So assets are creative.
Diana, I have a question for you, and this is fascinating. Thank you for that really thorough explanation.
Sure.
What's interesting to me is how you've targeted a certain sector for about 70% of your business, the car dealerships. The question I have is, it makes sense in one respect to me because you really understand that business, so you can speak their language. But how do you deal with potential conflicts of interest? Like you may be representing competitors. Is that a concern of some of your clients?
Yeah, so that's a great question, Stephanie. We do pretty much, so the auto market that we represent is like BMW, Porsche, Infiniti, Jaguar, Land Rover, Volkswagen. We have 13 OEMs that we have certifications with. We also actually work with agencies of record, Omnicom, WPP, IPG, and they all represent different types of manufacturers as well, which is Nissan, Ford Motor Company, as well as Acura. And people have always said to me, well, how are you able to get all of them? But the technology that we invented is so rare that it's the choice that I give everybody is I'm the only one that does it. So if you don't want to do it with me, then that's fine. But another platform like this doesn't exist. And what it's able to do, Stephanie, that's so rare about it, and this is why I'm able to scale outside of auto, is anything with price. So I believe that customers don't buy anything unless they know how much is it. I'm able to answer that by putting in a feeding system that does hundreds of iterations based on price. And then the second thing is dynamic inventory. Do you have it in stock and can I get it now? So during COVID, when nobody wanted to leave their house and go to a store, and even now people want it immediately, but there's warehouses all over the place and you don't know if you can ship it that far or if the supply is going to be there. This dynamically generates the inventory of what you currently have in stock and makes it readily available for that customer. So if I'm a customer that lives in Boston, I can attach the inventory of what they're looking for in Boston with the price and the location, Boston, Massachusetts. And the fourth thing, Stephanie, it does is customer segmentation, which means it knows that I speak different languages. It knows that I'm a Chinese consumer that likes to speak Chinese, and it's going to make the ad in Chinese as well. And so it does a customer segmentation of who you are, does the price, location, as well as inventory within your local market area. And that's what it did for auto, because there was 17,500 US franchises in this country, dealerships. And that's what it's able to do. So there's a lot of D2C brands that work the same way. So fast food, you have McDonald's, you have Burger King, you have Starbucks. You also have industries that actually have rooftops all over the place. Peloton, Tesla, I can go on and on. They have the same exact issues as auto. And that's why we're able to scale it in and outside of auto.
So my question now that I understand you're largely a software company, did you end up, do you have had to take investors in to fund all this development? Or is that possible to bootstrap something this significant?
Yeah, I bootstrapped the entire thing all the way to, we're going to hit close to 45 million, 50 million in sales this year in 5 years.
Is that net to you, or is that including your people are paying you for advertising and you're paying the bill and you're taking a percentage of it? Is that gross or net, the 45 million?
So if you're asking me if it actually involves COGS or not, are you guys familiar with COGS?
No, I'm talking about are you paying for their advertising and then they're paying you back and you're taking a percentage of it, like an ad agency? There's gross billings and there's net billings.
Yes. I understand what you're saying, Jay. So it depends on the customer. So we have customers that it's net, and we have customers that actually pay gross, and then I pay for the media. So it depends on the setup of the customer that basically says, I'm going to pay the media because it's my ad account and I want to keep the ad account. And then I've got customers out there that I don't want the ad account to be mine. I want you to start the ad account and then bill me 30 days afterwards. So it depends on how they want to set it up.
So is that for some of those customers where you are handling the advertising dollars, is that included in that revenue figure?
Exactly. So I have gross and net, but the 45 is inclusive of everything. Yes.
And do you have exposure to running up? I know this has been a problem in ad agencies for years, where somebody runs up a big bill and then the customer goes bankrupt on them, and they're the ones that owe the media. Do you have any exposure to having bad receivables on that?
Yeah. So Jay, these are great questions. So I did not have the money to be able to float all of this in the beginning. And people always ask, how the hell did you bootstrap this if you had to pay for the media in advance? So what I did with the car dealerships is I went there and I said, the only way I could take your account is I need you to prepay the media in advance, 1 month in advance.
Good for you.
Yeah. And so still to this day, 50% of my clients will still prepay. And then obviously I have giant clients now at the stage that I post, after the whole thing is done.
That's terrific. I wish I could get my clients and customers to prepay.
You do. It's called selling retail.
I won a few awards in the last few years, and one of the female founders that won the award, she said, I'm going to get funding right now. And I was like, why? And she said, I really need it to make the supply. And I said, do me a favor, go back. And I want you to ask the retailer if they're willing to pay 50% of it up front. And she's like, you think they'll do that? And I said, what do you have to lose? She went back and they paid 50% up front. And these are huge retailers. She didn't have to get funded at that stage because she was at 4 million at the time. And she grew it up to 20 million without any funding.
You raise a really good point. I think too often entrepreneurs, especially, you're lulled by what you see on TV with the profit and Shark Tank, and you want to get funding, VC funding, private equity dollars. And there's a lot of money out there right now. So it's very tempting, but you can bootstrap this just like what you did, which is so impressive. You can grow more slowly, but deliberately and thoughtfully in a way that you can manage the growth. And I love the idea that you've gone out there and said, okay, this is a partnership and I'm growing and I'm going to help you grow and pay 50% down and I'll deliver.
most importantly, you stay in control of your business and your life.
You do.
I mean, it's the small giants model. Like, you could be 3 times bigger, but you can get a phone call at 9 o'clock at night from some screaming investor. The concept of silent investor is kind of an oxymoron. There's no such thing. And unfortunately, what's happened in the world of entrepreneurship over the last 20 years, people equate entrepreneurship with raising money. And they're not. It's just not the same thing.
Completely different.
Entrepreneurship is starting a business, period. It's not about raising money.
And it's crazy. I get pitched by private equity, and I always take those calls because I see it as a learning experience, if nothing else. And you never know. There might be some amazing fit. But in general, the private equity that has approached Stuckey's, they're asking to invest 10 million, 20 million, and we don't need that kind of money. Honestly, if somebody offered it to us, we wouldn't want to take it because we have a growth plan that we can manage right now. And this concept of you have to have $20 million for your company, I think is unrealistic in some cases. It certainly doesn't fit for us. And we'd rather just either take out loans or manage our growth in a way that we can keep investing in the company.
Diana, what is your attitude toward growth? Do you feel as though you sacrificed growth by not taking investment dollars?
Hell no. I mean, I have to say, I grew from 4 million to 10 million to 20 million to close to 50 million this year without taking any funding, right? And I think, exactly what Jay and Stephanie said, I maintain control, which is fantastic, because you have to stay nimble if you're going to grow that fast, right? So deals come through my desk, and the decision is, how am I going to put this deal together? And how am I going to be nimble enough to put this deal together? So if an Omnicom comes to the table, and I'm using this as an example, and they're like, look, Diana, I don't like your fee structure, and I wanted the fee structure to be based on CPM, or I want it to be based on percentages. I can change the fee structure without having to go to board of directors, getting an approval, getting other people to do it. I just change it based on whatever works for the client. And at the end of the day, that's a huge competitive advantage. And so for me, also being a woman of color, it's super important for me to break the glass ceiling for everybody else. And what that basically means is, if somebody's going to come in for a partnership, I want the company to get an evaluation of hundreds of millions of dollars. If I have 5% stake or 10% stake on this, then I'm not going to give that kind of level of support that I need to from my staff members to be able to get that kind of evaluation. That's what I'm going for. If I'm in this, I'm going to go for as high an evaluation for everybody that's involved. And I can't get there if I gave up 50% of my company right up front. I'm not going to be able to do that. But to say that there isn't no fast growth by doing it the way I did, there is huge fast growth. And then on top of it, I don't have debt because I'm 52. I don't believe in debt. And so a lot of it was maneuvering deals and figuring things out, but it is doable.
For you, it's doable without debt. For you, for your business model, there are some companies that need to take debt to grow. I mean, that's the reality of some businesses. You don't have inventory.
I mean, I think that I have media buy, right? That's my inventory at the end of the day. But all I'm trying to basically say out there is, don't look at the model as the traditional way of everybody doing it the same way. Look at it from the perspective of how you want to do it. So, for example, I never owned a digital media agency before. I never even worked at one before. And what's interesting to me is when other people come to our organization and they look at it and they go, from a creative perspective, it's so different. So I've had creative agencies come in here and they say, I want a partnership. And they look around, they're like, it's Diana, you've never worked at a creative agency before, have you? And I said, no. And they said, that's why it looks like this. It's not the traditional model. And it's because I don't have the boundaries or the blockers that told me that it should look like this. I didn't have that, which is a huge advantage, because if you know what it's supposed to look like, you end up duplicating that. But if you don't know what it looks like, you build something completely innovative and different. And so that's what I believe in, is like almost like starting from a place where you don't have to know everything, but then you make it the way you envision it.
So I've got a question, Diana, and this is a little off topic, but you referenced being a woman of color. And this is something I've been researching, is getting certification as a women-owned business. And I'm interested if you have gone that route and if you have any lessons learned. I've talked to several women who have gotten that certification, and it does enable you to get priority ranking, I guess, in some procurement contracts, especially if you're dealing with the government, but also a lot of large corporations will give you benefits, like as a retailer or as a wholesaler that provides to retail businesses. If you have that certification, they'll waive slotting fees, for example. So just curious if you've gone that route.
I also met a female founder that built her business to $1 billion valuation, and she went that route. So prior to meeting her, the first couple of years, I didn't have any certifications. After meeting her, realizing what she had done, I did get certified by WeBank, WBENC.
Yeah. What was that process like? I've heard it's arduous.
It's arduous. And then I also got certified with National Minority Supplier.
Yes.
So DSC. And they're both very, very similar. So you have to answer a ton of questions online and then also certify the fact that you're at least 51% vested interest is stock in the company. And then you also have to certify sometimes that you have more than that percentage of employees that's actually working for your organization as well. So they're not going to certify you if you could be a minority owner, but if you don't have minority employees, or if you're a female-owned owner, but you don't have as many female employees, that certification will also be very difficult to get. And then they also come to your office to make sure you're telling the truth. So
yes, they do a site visit.
Yes. So you go through a full interview process. And I asked them why. And they said, well, Diana, there are people out there that they actually use a front person, but when you arrive, they realize that they don't actually run the business. And so that's when I guess they fail the certifications.
Well, that certification really carries a lot of weight, and it does get you financial benefits. So I definitely respect that process. We actually decided not to go that route because I don't think I would pass. I have a male partner, and we own the company 50-50, so I wouldn't pass it right at that point. And we even discussed giving me that 1% or giving another female owner that 1%. But we thought, for the very reasons you just outlined, Diana, that they would come to the site visit and see, frankly, the majority of our leadership, with the exception of our CFO, are white males. Our CFO is an African-American woman, but of our leadership team, it's majority white males. So I didn't think we'd get it. But I do think it's got tremendous benefits, and kudos for you to carrying that, for getting that.
Can we go back to the bootstrapping? It's kind of from the outside, hearing your unbelievable growth. And now that I understand you're a software company, and I know just from the peripheral of it takes a ton of money to write software. So if you didn't take bank financing, did you just have some personal savings? You had to hire these expensive engineers to write this, developers. How does that happen?
Yeah. So these are great questions. I originally told you that I started as a digital marketing agency, and I flipped it to a software-enabled digital marketing agency too. So what does that mean is, in the very beginning, because I started as a digital media agency, it was a business first before it went into software. So the first year, remember I told you I had all our customers prepay. Right. I put in $22,000 to start the company, $22,000. And so I didn't have a float. I didn't have investors. I didn't even have family money in it yet, because my majority thinking is I needed to make sure that before I even put in family money, that this was actually a business that could actually grow and become something. So started with $22,000 for the first year and a half, didn't put a penny more, made my clients prepay. And then our first OEM client that came in happened to be Volkswagen. And so at that point, that's when I actually had to start having receivables where, I didn't have a prepay situation. And when the bigger clients came in, it became harder and harder for those receivables to go on. But what ended up happening, Jay, is because I started it as a business foundation first, not a software foundation first, I used the profitability of the business to start funding the software side. That's what happened. And that part allowed me to fail several times, because when I first started development, I wasted $1 million. $1 million.
On what?
On making a product that nobody wanted. And you don't know that until you launch it and you try to sell the damn thing and you realize you come up with so many issues when it's software ready first, which is like, you believe in it. Everybody tells you they're going to buy it. They tell you it's a great idea. You meet with all these people and they're like collaboration. They're telling you if you did it this way, if you put in these features, if you did this, if you tweaked that, if you made this, you build it based on these people that basically lie to you. Not because they want to, but because this is what they really believe, but they're wrong. And then you build it and then you realize no one comes. So then you start dropping the price of it and you drop it. And then you get to a point where I was like, it's $750. I'm breaking my back doing this and I don't have the infrastructure to scale this thing. And so this is what's super important. If you build a business model first that makes money, then you can supply it to the software side at little to no risk, and you don't have the investors doing it. Therefore, they don't shut you down and say nobody wants it. You get no more funding. That's the difference.
Diana, can you tell us what were those early conversations like with car dealers? I mean, when you showed up, you said you didn't exactly look like them, but you could talk the language. But you were asking them to prepay for something that they'd probably never heard of before and possibly didn't fully understand. How did you get them to buy in?
Yeah, so you have to make it about the customer. You never go in and you say, I've got a amazing product. I'm going to show you these people have been pitched 30, 40, 50 times in a week, right? So you've got to not talk about yourself. So the first thing I would do is I would do a demo study of their area. And I would go in and I'd say, look, you got 46% Hispanic population here. You got 12% Asian population here. They happen to speak Chinese or Korean. And how are you marketing these people? Because if you look at the reality of it, everybody's marketing in English, but they're not marketing it in different languages. So I knew that was my way in. Because think about most of the people that I deal with in auto, most of the general managers and the owners are non-diverse, right? And so I know that because there's little to no diversity in the auto side of things, and I'm not saying the employees, I'm saying the people on top, you have to go in and talk like a business owner. So you're like, hey, notice that your demographic data is really high in Spanish. In fact, I ran the household income around here. And in this area, you've got, 50% of them make over $100,000. So they can afford your product. But I noticed that all your advertising is in English. So look, I think I could change this for you. And because I look different, and this is the part that's shocking to you, I don't speak Korean. I immigrated here when I was 5 years old. I speak very little Korean. In fact, I can't even write in Korean. And so just because I looked the way I looked, they looked at me and they said, she could do it in multicultural. It was a shot in the dark. I didn't know it, but I looked the part. So they gave me a shot. And I carried through with what I delivered because I was able to hire people that could actually deliver that experience. And I was able to do it multiculturally first. And then it was so good that I took over all the English ads as well.
That's so smart. I really love the way you hunkered down on what makes you unique, what's your differentiator, and you led with that where it really made sense. So kudos to you for doing this.
Thank you so much.
What was 2020 like for you?
Yeah, it was a beast. March of 2020, it was the first month I saw declining revenues. Every month, year over year, I've doubled. And so when I didn't double and I started to have declining revenues, March and April, I didn't know what I was going to do. And I remember I got a phone call from my bank and they gave me an hour-long conversation. And they said, Diana, it's time for you to lay off people and do it quick. Fire 50% of your staff.
Wait. If you have no debt, why is the bank getting into a conversation like that with you?
Because I had called them and I said, what do you think? Is the economy going to turn around? Is this going to, how are we going to come out of this? So these are like, my bankers have become my friends, and so they called me and they said, look, Diana, the reality is this. We've seen businesses go under because the CEO was too attached to their employees. And at the end of the day, they could not float the note long enough and they ended up losing all of their cash flow. And then they ended up going under even when they had to cut the employees in half. It was too late. So do it now while you have the cash flow to do it. And that was an hour-long conversation that I had with them. And I got out of the conversation and I said, no, I'm not doing it. And I didn't say that to them because they didn't really care because I didn't have any debt. Of course, I had a credit line with them that was unutilized at the time. But, banks only give you money when you don't need them. Right?
Wait. You do have a credit line at the bank now?
I do.
And do you use it?
I use it every once in a while when I need to.
Oh, I'm confused then. You just said you don't believe in bank debt. You're not taking bank debt. And now you're telling us you have a credit line that you've got bank debt.
So I take it, Jay, but I pay it off at the end of the month. I hate interest. That's my thing. So I have it when I need it. And that was just actually in the last year and a half. So prior to that, I never had a credit line, but I pay it off.
No, which makes sense that you would have it. I'm not criticizing. I don't want anyone to think out there, oh, look, there's somebody that has a business that has absolutely no bank debt. That's a really difficult thing to pull off.
Yeah.
So the fact is you have a credit line, that's bank debt. Let's call it what it is. It's bank debt, even though if you pay it off at the end of the month.
I was thinking the same thing, Jay, but I do think it is different than bank debt and that you're servicing it regularly. We have a line of credit and it is treated differently than your more traditional loan.
Okay. It is bank debt. You can call it whatever you want.
Yeah. So let me make sure that I'm super clear on this. I couldn't get the credit line for the first 2 years. Nobody gave me anything.
I'm sure. I can understand that.
So I didn't have it until very recently in the last, I would say 2 years is when I actually got a credit line finally because they don't like to give you a credit line when there's any risk whatsoever. And so it took me a couple years to prove the fact that I had a stable business. But at the time, the bank called me because not that I had any loans at the time, but because they didn't want me to go under. And so they gave me this long talk about, cut the staff. And I didn't do it. And the reason I didn't do it was because I just am pretty pig-headed, and I knew that if I could close this big software deal that I had in the pipeline for so long, that would carry me through. And so there's two things that I did during that time. I ended up getting that account, which was about $1.9 million of all fee because there was no media attached. And I ended up actually being able to float all the employees with that in starting May. The other thing I did was at the time, because I had so many employees that also weren't really doing much, and I didn't want to just float them for the sake of just giving them money because it doesn't make any sense, I started a 501c3 called the Do Good Auto Coalition. And the reason I started it was because I had gotten calls from nonprofits in the area because I worked with so many dealerships in the auto industry. They called me and they said, look, Diana, we've never needed cars in order to move the food around in Manhattan. But now, because all the restaurants are closed and the schools are all closed, these restaurants have all this food that's going bad and the food supplies broke, and you have warehouses worth of food and they're all going bad every minute that goes by. But then there's the homeless shelters and there are food pantries all across right now that basically have lines and hundreds of people right now waiting for the food. So I was like, okay, this is something that I can do. So I started to contact all these car dealerships, and I had a cause now. I'm like, look, you have cars, they have food. I'm not asking for any money. I needed to show up to these sites, and I needed to help me move the damn food to the areas that actually needed it. And it ended up becoming a big thing. And by the end of the year, by November, we had delivered over 700,000 pounds of food.
What did it mean for your business, though? If your employees didn't have actual work to do, did you still have revenue coming in at all?
We did, Lauren. We were about 25% up higher because I think by the end of the year, we realized that, people still needed vehicles and still needed to advertise.
We're running short on time, and Diana, I'm going to let you slip out of the hot seat for a moment and check in on Stephanie and Jay. And Diana, you get to ask some questions too.
Terrific.
Stephanie, I think you're back home. Last time we talked to you, you were visiting the factory you'd bought and figuring out what exactly you had bought. What did you learn?
Well, I learned a lot about production and our different lines. So I just really got an in-depth understanding of the operations, which is critical for me to be able to make some of the high-level decisions. Most importantly, since we've last talked, I went to the Sweet and Snack Expo, which is the trade show if you are in the candy or the snack business. So everyone from Hershey's and Frito-Lay and Doritos and M&M's and Pez Candy down to Stuckey's and a lot of small brands where people are working out of ghost kitchens. So just everyone was represented, and it was the launch of our new product line. So it's the same product that we've been making or been selling since the beginning, since the 1940s. But my grandfather sold the candy plant, the Stuckey's original candy plant, in 1964. So we had been outsourcing our product ever since then. So this is the first time in over 50 years that we're making our product again, and it's really delicious. And so I didn't know what kind of reaction we'd have at the trade show, and it was overwhelming. We literally, for the 3.5 days of the show, it was nonstop, people coming by the booth. And the couple of weeks since then, my business partner and I have really done nothing but respond to orders. So our biggest challenge right now is we're backlogged on our large retail chains. We're getting quite a few large chains, and by that I mean 200 units and up. And right now we're backlogged 4 to 6 months on filling some of those orders. So we're trying to level set expectations. The good thing is a lot of those large chains usually buy that far in advance or plan their category product line that far in advance. So it's not devastating if we tell them what our time frame is. And then we are able to fill the smaller mom and pop, small retail customers almost immediately.
What are you struggling with? Is it a labor issue that's keeping you from filling those orders faster?
Everything. Labor, supply chain, getting new packaging. We're running through packaging like crazy. So we've re-upped our packaging orders. We need actually new display boxes because we're getting into new channels. We're getting into more grocery channels and more chain C-store channels, and they want chipboard packaging, which is a lighter weight box than the thicker corrugated point of sale display box that we've been using. So we have to come out with some new display options.
I have a question to Stephanie and Jay. How much of your business is D2C? Direct to consumer?
I probably need a more recent breakdown, but I would say it's about 40%. We have 65 franchised, licensed, branded retail locations. And so from those locations, we are selling direct at stores that are branded as Stuckey's locations. And then we also have online sales. So those are direct to consumer. And then we operate a distribution facility. So we source product and distribute.
Got it. And then out of the D2C that you're doing, how much is it direct through digital instead of it actually being through a rooftop?
It was about 3 to 5%, but lately it's getting up to 10% ever since COVID. And we've been revamping our website. We're actually about to switch to the Shopify platform. We've been just on WordPress, so it's a little clunky. So we're upgrading a lot of our software, and we'll have that in place by Q4.
I converted over to Shopify, and it's worked out extremely well. We're very happy.
I think you guys should share that experience. And mainly I say because there's a lot of business owners, I think, that are out there that say, I don't have the capital in order to actually start the business, but they don't realize that they could do it digitally without having a rooftop, right?
Well, the difference between us and everyone else is she has a legendary name. People know Stuckey's Candy, and I have a store that's very popular, so it's driving business to the website. If I had to do it from just scratch, only a website, I don't know that I could have pulled that off, or I certainly don't have the skill set to pull it off. It's much harder. So the two of us do have some momentum coming from, conventional means.
Well, we have challenges with order fulfillment in a timely fashion because the Amazon effect, which we've discussed in previous episodes of this podcast, there's an expectation from the consumer of getting their product within 48 hours, within 2 to 3 business days. Now, Amazon's had some backlogs, so fortunately that has pumped the brakes a little bit on those expectations, but customers still want their product pretty quickly. And when you have a smaller operation that does not run on weekends, we have one person on staff at our distribution facility who is tasked with doing order fulfillment. But we just have that one person. And if she's sick, then we have to have the office manager fill the online orders.
Well, that begs the question, why don't you have 2 people then? Or why don't you have 3 people do that?
We don't have the volume just yet. But I think for Q4, we may have to ramp it up. And now that we've acquired the manufacturing facility, they also have online order fulfillment people on staff. So we're figuring out those integration of our businesses issues. The other challenge is, of course, shipping costs, which are just killing us. If you're in a small town, rural area, we're in Eastman, Georgia and Marennes, Georgia are our 2 facilities. FedEx doesn't deliver as regularly. UPS comes by once a day. The post office, we have to drive over there. They don't come pick up our big packages.
Jay, last time we talked to you, you were looking for a CFO. How's that going?
You know what? It's gone exactly as what I predicted. We put out the ad. We wrote a really good ad, laid out the whole story of the company. And I said, we'll probably get 100 applications, 100 resumes, and there will probably be 5 that'll be suitable. And so far, we're up to about 80 something. And I have what I thought. I have 4 or 5 people that are that look like they might be the right people. The interesting part that I didn't predict is they're almost all in their 50s to even 64.
Are you allowed to know that and talk about that?
Well, you can go. I'm talking about it. I'm just saying it's a fact. I mean, you can look at when they graduated college. I would have thought there'd be more people that were more mid-career. Now, maybe this is a great opportunity for somebody that wants to finish out their career for the last 10 or 15 years and work at a smaller company, and maybe younger people are still shooting to go work for a bigger company. I don't know what the explanation is, but it's kind of a stunning, it's accurate. Or maybe the job's so complicated that a 44-year-old, most of them don't have that experience. I don't know, but I'm confident we're going to find somebody out of this group.
Is the issue of working remotely coming up?
It's going to. I mean, my HR person did some phone interviews, and one guy said he wants to work from home, and good luck with that. That's all I can say. Why in the world would I want to bring a CFO into a company with 4 different divisions and 5-6 different people they've got to deal with? Why would I want to sign off on that on the front end? I won't even question why someone would do that. I have no interest in that. I also am not going to take a black and white thing of, no, you can't work from home ever. But But there's a big ramp up stage here. They have to understand the business, and they got to understand what goes on here. And that is absolutely an issue that certainly wouldn't have been on the list 10 years, 5 years, 3 years ago. It wouldn't have been on the list. Now it's definitely on the list.
I agree with Jay as well.
Is your staff back in the office, Diana?
We actually, back in July, I opened the office because I was having mental health issues with some of the employees. And I don't know if you guys experience the same thing.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I opened it and made it work from home optional because I felt like they needed to be people that just had to walk around and go someplace. And so that was one of the best decisions I think I made, was for the employees, where they could come here if they wanted to and just remain distant from each other. And it's big enough space that they could, but it allowed them to still leave their homes.
Let's talk about my hourly search for someone to work in my wood department to cut picture frames.
Please.
My production manager just told me yesterday he had 24 conversations on the phone, scheduled appointments. 4 people showed up out of 24, 4, and of the 4, he's had 3 are just train wrecks. So I don't know that I can totally diagnose this. I think it's partially the unemployment.
What kind of job is this?
For cutting frames and working in to make picture frames, cutting on the saw, joining the frames, which I never used to have a problem finding people for that. And I actually have another aspect I just thought of this morning listening to the radio. I think part of it is some of them are getting unemployment and it's not worth going to work. Some of them have childcare issues, no question. I get that. And here's another piece. The people at this level, most of them rent apartments, and many of them probably aren't paying rent because they legally, they've been protected from that. So we'll find out in September whether there's more people out there. I can't explain why 24 people would say, I'll come for an appointment and then not show up. It makes no sense.
What doesn't make sense?
It's not like the economy's okay, we're doing well, but why is there all of a sudden a labor shortage that's this severe?
It's a mismatch. A lot changed. We hit the pandemic. Things happened. People got sick. People died. People moved. People decided they wanted to do something different with their lives. Some of it's geographic.
I accept that for hospitality. I accept that some people don't want to work in the restaurants anymore because of a lot of issues that happen with that. But working in a factory, I don't know that person that was working in the factory is going to all of a sudden say, oh, I'm not going to work in a factory anymore.
I don't know exactly what you're paying, Jay, but, that may be a factor.
Well, the minimum wage in Chicago has officially gone to $15. So it's kind of queued everyone up to the same. I don't think most people are paying. Here's the other question then. Why did they agree to making an appointment? Why didn't they just say, listen, that's not enough. Thanks anyway.
I'm not going to explain that.
Yeah, that's what really surprises me is that the absolute no-shows. Well, good riddance. You don't want those people working for you.
I think one of the mix is, and I'm the last person to do this, and I don't want to pick on millennials because I've got lots of wonderful millennials here. But there's been a mentality change a little bit in the marketplace. There is. It's not the same. I'm not complaining about them. They think a little differently. And like I said, I've got wonderful, wonderful millennials working for me, but there's just lots of stuff that's going on all at once. And I'm going to argue September, let's see what happens. I'm going to guess it's going to get easier in September.
We're just about out of time. Last question, Diana, are you having issues? Do you have openings?
Yeah, I have about 40 openings right now, and it's because we're growing so quickly, right? And so my issues are very similar to you guys, but the bigger issue for me is everybody wants to do digital marketing right now because they want to go direct to consumer through digital. So they are getting job offers left and right that they've never gotten before. I've lost employees now to Peloton. I've lost them to Amazon. I've lost them to DoorDash. They're going after my people like I've never seen.
All right. My thanks to Jay Goltz, Diana Lee, and Stephanie Stuckey. Thanks for sharing, guys. Wait, don't leave yet. If you have a question or a comment that you'd like the 21 Hats owners to address, send it to me by replying to your morning report or by email at lauren@21hats.com. That's LOREN@21hats.com. Do it now before you forget, and don't be afraid to tell Jay what you really think. You can take it. And if you got something out of this conversation, help us reach more business owners. Tell a friend. Subscribe and review us wherever you get your podcasts. Follow us on Twitter. Subscribe to The Morning Report at 21hats.com. This episode was produced by Jess Thuberon, founder of Blank Word Productions. Okay, now you can leave. Thanks for listening, everyone.